We're here. This is the Commoner Law Group's monthly free traveler confab. That's short for confabulation or just a get together. It's relatively casual compared to our more structured educational opportunities that you can find at commonerlaw.com, where we have full curriculum on the Great American Law, for example, how to rid your town of tyrants. The newest offering is an equity. If you're not familiar with equity as a jurisdiction or as a remedy, that's a very deep subject, a very powerful remedy. I call it the everything remedy. You can find all those things on commonerlaw.com. But tonight, we just get together and we get to share and talk. We share our experience, we share our information, we share our love, we share our support with each other. And we are so blessed to be together. And we're so blessed that people like our special guests tonight are coming forward and willing to just share what their experience is to contribute back to the greater good here, what they've learned, their experience, the results they've got. And we encourage all results. Like if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We need to research and investigate and study the law. But in the end, unless we apply it, unless we get out there and do it, it's all theory. So the huge value to all of us is when any one of us is able to go out there, actually accomplish something, and then come back and share it with the rest of us. So we're not just theorizing anymore, we're dealing with reality. And, there's no one way to skin the cat when it comes to freedom to travel. We do cover everything in the vehicle code. So when you register your vehicle, for example, or when you go to get a driver's license, or what about when you're on the roadway and you get a traffic infraction, a ticket? There's toll roads. There are cameras in urban areas. They take pictures and then they send you a ticket by mail. So we're willing and we're interested in working with people to look at and challenge all of these issues and see how we can do it. And there's a lot of different solutions. Over the last 2+ years that we've been meeting here every single month for over 2 years, we've heard from a variety of people who have tried a lot of different things. And once again, tonight we have the blessing to have a real concrete example of what can work and what has worked, in fact. So we're going to be hearing from Lori and Robon. We're going to find out what Lori and Robon have been doing, their journey to get here. I'd like to actually start with that. We'll do, if you don't mind, we'll do a kind of interview style. I think our first engagement was when you did the Great American Law series. That would be the first time that our paths crossed, and you were one of the earlier people who took the course. The Great American Law series, of course, is Commoner Law Group's first and still central course in just fundamentals of teaching people what it means to be free in America, even in the 21st century. And then you've taken the ball and run with it. Let's start saying what attracted you to the Great American Law series. When you took the course, what did you get out of it? And what are some of the things that still resound with you to this day?
I think the experience of witnessing Fritz was what drew me into the course to just participate in it. It's like being in the midst of someone who really knows who they are is what has been our experience of going from different mentors and sort of having that experience. And in hindsight, I think that the experience with the Commoner Law is, how do you respond to someone coming at you? That was kind of my takeaway from Fritz. So like, it seemed to me that Fritz was living his life on his own terms. And when people came and tried to impose their jurisdiction over him, he set the record straight, to put it mildly, And I think being in the presence of that, and that was a real takeaway for me, was experiencing what it's like to be in the midst of someone who really knows who they are and can respond to whatever is coming at him. And I thought that the material and his conditional acceptance and the way to back that up with paperwork that can be recognized in this existing system, it's a component to this whole process. But I think one of the challenges is that there can be a focus on paperwork without understanding. And so, when I first started to learn about what it means to be free, and I know initially I thought, oh, I can file a couple papers and and sort of be free. And this journey has really been a reveal of the other side of that. And what comes first is understanding, and then supported by, paperwork. So Fritz is like as we're assembling kind of our puzzle of how we're learning. Um, Fritz definitely resides there as one of the characters that we came across that just really embodies the talk, and really loved him for it.
Yes, you're speaking specifically of Fritz van Mastright, and he's
Yeah,
the instructor of the Great American Law Series, who has, as you said, living his life for decades without the need for licenses and fees, and he just opts out. He's just opted out decades ago and hasn't bothered. But as you said, the course includes not only amazing instruction about the Constitution, about freedom, about distinctions in law like jurisdiction and what's a true crime, and all the things that you really need to understand as an American to really appreciate what it means to be a free American, a sovereign American, and to speak it. But his personal stories are
yeah,
so compelling because he lived it. And everything from turning away a building code inspector who was stinging him,
yeah. That was a great
pretending to
story.
be a customer and then wanted to enforce the licensing code, to when he was younger, also turning away some armed police officers who came to his house as well. That story is scintillating,
Yeah.
but it's absolutely consistent. He's one consistent human being living the truth of what an American is supposed to be.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's an absolute embodiment, Clint. And that's what we've learned in our process. Raban talked about the fact that we started thinking, oh, we're going to fill out a couple templates and this is going to be fine. And we've really learned through a number of different mentors. Fritz, what we both really took from it, and we've been building on it, is the fact that he was so clear in his authority figures. He says, my creator is who I answer to, in the kingdom of God, not the kingdom of man. And we have since taken that through other works that we're doing also. And it's just such a simple, it's just boom, it just brings you right back into center. Like, well, wait a minute. Am I answering to man now? A man being an authority figure that's trying to overpower my creator? And it can be such a simplistic, when you're in different situations, just kind of pull you right back. And with that, I think just becomes a very solidness in that space that has been beautiful. And we've been trying to embody that in the work that we're doing, taking this out into the world, taking it off the papers and out into the world in the different ways that we live.
Very good. Yeah, it's a powerful course, both in terms of the content and in this inspiration from the leader himself. And so we're here to focus on free travel and freeing yourself from the vehicle code, the California vehicle code. Tell us what inspired you to take on that avenue of freedom.
Yeah, it was really a bit circumstantial. Perhaps it's life's way of getting us to respond to what is. So last March, my registration on my truck was up for renewal. And I was in the midst of learning about a lot of these things and decided that I wasn't going to renew my truck registration with the DMV. And so I never got the new tags, and March became April, became May, became June, and I started receiving bills from the DMV saying, you owe us money. You need to get your truck registered with us. And I was learning that I don't need to register my private property. I don't need to register in order to travel. And I'm kind of learning about this, learning about writing notices and stepping forth as a man with rights endowed by my creator. So those bills from the DMV were eventually replaced, probably in the fall, with a notice from the Franchise Tax Board saying that the DMV has passed on your bill to us, and we now will collect on that. Thank you very much. And we can garner your wages, and et cetera, et cetera. So at this point, I had been learning more about writing notices. So I wrote a notice to the head of the Franchise Tax Board. I forget the woman's name, Stevie Steady something, Stanilas or something, the one who's the director of the Franchise Tax Board, asking her for confirmation of a law that requires a man to register his property in order to travel, amongst other things in that notice. Few weeks go by, I don't hear back from the Franchise Tax Board, but lo and behold, I get a letter from the DMV saying, we received your application for registration. You just need smog, and the amount you owe is $0. So something happened with the Franchise Tax Board. They nulled out the money that I supposedly owed in order to play their game on their monopoly registration DMV game. So I owed no money, and they wanted me to just get my truck smogged, and I could then be a happy driver again. So I didn't respond to that. And this was a number of months ago when that finally, sort of was remedied, I suppose, in the way that now I didn't owe any more money. So I was now, but still driving with a truck with the old license plate on it, with the expired tags on it. So I'm out of compliance in that way. And what was this? Maybe like 4 months ago or so. I'm in San Rafael here, which is the just town up, and I'm at just about to merge onto the freeway at a red light, and I'm listening to a message on my phone in my truck. And I look in the rearview mirror and I see a highway patrol car behind me in my truck. And so I finished listening to the message and the light turned green, and I proceeded, and within 10 seconds, the lights hit, and I get pulled over. And so I thought, okay, here we go. What's the process? So what I had done, I should say, as a context, is I had already sent an affidavit on file with the Secretary of State, the U.S. Secretary of State, establishing myself as a man and not as a legal fiction person, amongst other things in the affidavit. And so in my truck, I also had put different papers. I had compiled a PDF of high court cases and different codes and a copy of the affidavit and a number of things in the car. And so the police officer came up and pointed out that I was on my phone and my registration tags were out of order, and wanted to see my license and registration. And that's when the conversation just began, back and forth, of just, with all due respect, I'm not under your jurisdiction. And so from the context of pointing out of what is the difference of jurisdiction, and what is the difference between common law and is there an injured party. And we had a very cordial exchange back and forth. Never gave him my driver's license, never gave him my insurance. He went back to his car and ran my plate. So he came back with my information. And the conversation continued, where he was suggesting that there is an unalienable right to travel, but it doesn't include on the roadways. And I respectfully disagreed, and we continued our conversation. He went back to his car a second time and was gone for maybe less than 5 minutes, came back, said, we're all done here, shook my hand, told me to have a nice day, and off he went.
What was that like? How did that feel?
That felt great. That felt great. And I felt, as you were alluding to earlier, the process of standing in the light of what is true, with the humility, if I'm wrong about any of this, then correct me. Present me with the evidence that shows that I need to register my property, that I need to pay a fine if I'm driving. Like, just show me the evidence, because my understanding, I've been looking, there is no evidence. So the first thing I did was actually call Lori, tell her the news that, okay, something's happening here, right? So the next part of the story, though, is that a month or so later, my truck broke down. The end of my truck, I had to get another vehicle. So I picked up a used vehicle. And so now I'm faced with that title of registration. Am I going to send that into the DMV and register this vehicle with the DMV? And I decided not to. But now I have this license plate on there. And so that prompted me, kind of these conditions prompting me to come up with a solution. And so I went through the process of getting a foreign EIN number, using that foreign EIN number to register with the Department of Transportation website to get a DOT number. And my understanding of the DOT number is that 99.9% of all the DOT numbers are required to drive commercially inter and intrastate. So if you're hauling trucking and merchandise, you need an official DOT number. But it is possible to go through the DOT process to get a number where you just check the boxes where the resulting record just shows private, that you have a DOT number that is for a private vehicle. So when you look up a DOT number, it just says that this is a private vehicle. And that was just something when I was doing some research and talking to other people who were using a DOT number and not having any problems. Because again, I think because it's private, you're really underscoring being in a private automobile, private vehicle, private conveyance.
I just asked a question about it because yes, the distinction between private and public, or private and commercial, is critical, and I guess in the end it's kind of simple, but somehow even I get them mixed up. So do you drive commercially? Do you drive in a way that you believe should be regulated in a public sense by the government, or is all of your use of your conveyance private? And like, how do you actually use your truck, and does it matter?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that if you're using it to, say, do Uber or deliver food or truck merchandise or something like that, but if you're going from A to B, I mean, to me, that falls under the pursuit of happiness.
Okay.
The pursuit of going from A to B is what I consider a right to travel on the land, The other component to this that I think is absolutely fundamental is the understanding that all codes, acts, and statutes, all of them, whatever the millions are at this point, they all apply to persons. And so embodying the renewing of the mind about the difference between being a man or a woman in the private and being a person, which is a fictional being, as part of a game piece in this matrix game of all the codes and statutes. So there's a fundamental understanding that every driving code, statute, everything, taxes, everything, they all apply to persons. And I'm not a person. I'm not a fictional being. And so making that distinction is part of this process for us, of this idea of when people talk about changing your status, because I've spent most of my life consenting to being a person. I've checked the boxes that I'm a person. I've checked the boxes that I'm a US citizen. I've checked the boxes that I'm a resident of the United States. I've checked all sorts of boxes that said that I'm a person. I've said that I'm a driver. A driver is a person. And all of these rules of this game apply to persons. It's sort of like saying if someone wants me to play Monopoly and I choose to be the top hat, well, all the rules of Monopoly apply to the top hat. They don't apply to me as a man when I'm not playing Monopoly. If I pass by the game and someone says, hey, you have to pay 200 by pass and go, and I'd say, oh, sorry, you're confusing me with being a part of your game. I'm not in your game. I'm just passing through. So have fun with your game. I'm not trying to make you stop your game, but you're confusing me with the top hat. I'm not the top hat, And so there's that freedom, that gnosis that I think comes, and that's what I was talking about earlier, the difference between filing the right paper with the right place with the right ink or the stamp on it or some kind of process to say, oh, that's how I'm going to be free, versus knowing who we are and knowing who we're not. So making that distinction is what is our takeaway. The absolute fundamental way to be free is knowing the difference between being a man and a woman and a person. And that, though, comes with time and repetition. It's like almost like a training. If you're going to do a marathon, you're not going to run a marathon tomorrow. There's a training involved to renew the mind, because there's an idea of this responsibility, which is the ability to respond. And so every situation is going to be different. You know, the next time I get pulled over, if I do, will be another man or woman in another police costume, reacting differently to who I am. And how am I going to be able to respond to whatever the situation is, whether it's a police or a DMV officer or an IRS agent or anybody that's confusing me with being a person that's under their jurisdiction. So, at the moment, I've been driving for months with this DOT plate. So I made a new license plate. Maybe I could share that with you. Maybe I could pop it in the chat.
Yes, absolutely. You can use
let me see if it'll pop in. You can kind of see, I'm also kind of a graphic designer artist, so it's fun for me to create things. Let's just see here.
Yeah, it's a kind of an art form, especially today when we have such tyranny around us. To have this.
Yeah, there it is in the chat.
The creative artist. Yes, and there it is. Okay, and just to let people know too, Lori has had some recent success that we definitely want to hear about in detail too. So we've got, between the two of you, we've got a lot of experience, a lot of experimentation. Some things that have worked, something that haven't worked, but a lot that has worked. So, yay. David James Rodriguez is in the house, by the way. You want to say hi?
Yeah, real quick. Thank you. Yeah, this is very exciting stuff, Roman and Lori there. So keep it up. And the DOT stuff, great stories.
Okay, so I'll kind of jump into my story a little bit. So I went at things a slightly different angle. I have 3 children. They're all under my all of my DMV, all of my everything. So I wasn't quite ready until they're established and to do a lot of what Raban has done. But what I did end up doing, just out of need, is I started to try to rescission parking tickets that my boys were getting a lot of, but it was all under my name, and so I tried some of the rescission. Like if you look it up online, you'll see a lot of different examples of how people rescission their ticket within a certain amount of hours, and they basically state, we're not in contract. I did not contract with you for this specific contract that you're asking me to be in with you. Now that gets to be a little bit tricky, because when we sign our driver's license, which Raban and I had a real eye-opening, because we went to the DMV and we actually read all of the things we were signing away when we sign for a driver's license. And some of them are extremely concerning. One of them is that we will at any time offer our bodily fluid to be tested. So, that's a little bit concerning. So there were a number of things that, even as we were reading through that don't really sit that well with us. And so anyway, that's just another side story. But so anyway, I end up getting all these tickets. Now, the rescission was not working for me. I'll be honest with you, it wasn't working. Then I tried noticing. I sent a notice basically indicating that I was not under their jurisdiction, that I did not contract with them. I had no interest in being in this contract with them. Okay, long story short, I had a total of $500 now tallied up in parking tickets. And I received from the DMV a notice that they could reclaim the vehicle. And this has also been part of our journey, as we have learned, and a lot of you might already know this, that we don't own anything in this country. The United States, because we license with them, or because we register with them, or they have shares in our vehicles, they can take away, they can come and confiscate just about anything, because the truth of the matter is we don't own a lot of this. So when I got that notice that the car could be repossessed, I then went to another thing that we've been learning, which is House Joint Resolution 192. And I'm not sure how many, I'm getting off of the right to travel just a little bit, but I just want to let you know that this absolutely worked for this big ticket that I now had. I sent it off with a letter explaining House Joint Resolution 192, which basically is just an equal exchange. This goes back to, I don't want to get into the history of everything, but look it up. It's a very interesting, fascinating thing to learn about. I sent a notice off to the Department of the Treasury asking for, basically writing out a promise or signing my coupon, my payment coupon, over to them,
Accepting it for value
accepting it for value, right?
so that they could deposit it
Yeah.
as a
Promise.
financial asset,
Mhm.
basically, and then credit the charge, the debt that was owed to essentially the straw woman in this case.
Yeah. So I sent that off to the Department of the Treasury and actually didn't think all too much about it for a little bit. And then I said, oh my gosh, I better call the DMV. I'm not receiving any notice. I'm not receiving anything from the DMV. So I called the DMV, and they had absolutely no records of any parking ticket on this specific car. Completely clean, zeroed out, like zero. And the person that I spoke, the agent I was speaking with on the phone, said, oh yeah, and we actually just sent out your new registration. It's time for you to re-register the car. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to wait before I get too happy. I'm going to wait until I get this registration document, just to make sure that there's no extra charges on it. I got the, welcome to re-register, to continue playing in the game. And there was no additional fees of any sort for any ticket at all. So that's my story of how I'm now working with parking tickets, and I'm not doing the rescission process just because I didn't have much luck with that. And I'm just going directly to the Department of the Treasury and using House Joint Resolution 192. So
Wonderful, wonderful.
yeah, so we're kind of coming at it slightly different, but it is kind of interesting. There's been a lot of talk about DMVs and cars and stuff between the two of us. So, and our latest journey right now is to try to get an ID, and this is tricky, to try to get an ID as a man and a woman, not as a person in the system. And that we're running into some.
Well, I mean, one thing interesting on
obstacles.
that front is that to get a California ID, you have to consent to being a person in their paperwork. And so we went into the DMV to try to do this in person and had in person as and people. And they did not want to print, like we had got someone to print out the application for us, and other DMV people subsequently were shocked. They had never seen it printed out. The idea of being able to cross things out because everything's online now. And then within the last few weeks, I went to make another appointment to go back in with our long form birth certificates. And the DMV in California anyway is no longer doing appointments for ID cards. And
have to do it online.
You have to do it online. So it's one of those realizations that men and women can't get an ID card. Only persons can get ID cards. And so if anyone asks for an ID, it's just an interesting scenario. I mean, it's the same with a passport. Passport are for persons, perhaps, unless you have a diplomatic passport. But, this idea of being a title in the play versus just being a man or a woman. And so, I mean, we're exploring how we might be able to send in the paperwork to try to get a California ID just to have identification purposes. But it's fascinating to get a better understanding of how this matrix is one that applies to persons only.
Very good. I just want to, this is so amazing, you guys. Thank yourselves for coming tonight because you get to hear this wonderful story. And by the way, everything that you're hearing is being recorded. It will be put on our YouTube and Rumble channels. So far, I don't think anything's been said that's going to have YouTube kick us off, but that's why we have Rumble as well as a backup channel. But on YouTube, we have a whole playlist of just commoner law groups, free traveler monthly confabs. Lori, you did this thing. And you know, we've been meeting here monthly for over 2 years, and people have talked about this exact remedy. And as far as you can tell, you succeeded. And I will put a note out to everybody that it's the nature of the beast in this game we're playing, so to speak. We're playing a higher order game against their game. But in the end, when you do succeed, it's not like you get a letter from them saying, okay, yes, we did access the US Treasury, we did offset your account, you know, thank you. They don't, that doesn't happen. So if we're completely transparent, we have to say that B followed A, you know, and we presume there's a cause and effect, that because you did what you did and it disappeared, that was the cause and effect. But I just want to just put that out there. That's sort of the nature of the beast. And so it's true, though, that you very much believe that it was rescinded, that U.S. Treasury, based on the House Joint Resolution 192 and the federal law that obligates the U.S. Treasury to pay public debt, you really believe that that's what happened, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Yep, I absolutely do. Mm-hmm.
Because it's profound, right?
Absolutely. And Clint, that's part of kind of this whole message, is that we're going from how the country largely sees us as minors. They still see us as minors largely. And so to step into a role of being your own authority, it does mean that you need to stay up on top of this stuff. No, they're not going to reach out and say, oh, you're such a good little girl, you got this, and we said it was okay. No, this is you staying on top of things. This is you checking in and saying, okay, wait a minute, I'm not going to pay that bill till I see if what my balance is on my statements, because I sent this in and maybe I'm going to get that exchanged. So it's definitely a little bit more work to do this stuff, but it's what a huge reward if you can just stop putting money into their coffers. I mean, this is, to me, that's the biggest piece of this, because we keep funding. We know where this money's going. These are all private companies. This is we have no more government. These are they all have Dun and Bradstreet number for these.
What's interesting is that when one of our tickets, we were like, well, who is the Marin Parking Authority? So we thought, well, let's just track down who's the Marin Parking Authority. Maybe we could talk to someone at the Marin Parking Authority. You know, who's got the jurisdictions allegedly to put tickets on these vehicles, you know? And our search into the Marin Parking Authority sort of took us, there is no local Marin Parking Authority here. There's only a forwarding to a website that is a sort of a depository of parking authorities all over the country. And it's a corporation that has it seems like a huge windowless building that you don't know who's inside there. There's no distinguishing features. The website's totally stripped down. There's no about, there's no nothing. And the question is, in our minds, well, what money comes back to Marin from the Marin Parking Authority? Because it seems like it's a national website that all counties are paying their tickets into this sort of it's you know, it's just kind of this question about where does the money go in these infractions where there's no victim, you know, these victimless crimes.
Yes, powerful. So you guys want to appreciate, as I always do, the holistic picture here. So as you know, we've been saying it over and over in different ways. We're going to keep saying it, right? That it's not just learning like a recipe to make cookies where you follow step by step, and then if you do all the steps right, more or less you'll get the cookie, you get the result at the end. You have to embody it, and you can say it so many different ways, and it comes back around. And if you forget, you're reminded, aren't you? And I can tell you, across all of the Commoner Law Group's courses, and all of the students have taken all of our courses, there's definitely I figured it out very early on because the indicators were there that the people who showed up, who embodied it, who internalized the freedom, the sovereignty within themselves, and saw through the ruse, and realized that we are, we're being tricked, and to get outside the trick, to stand in your truth, your God-centered truth, that is really the success factor. And so another example of, if you keep on the path of truth, all kinds of wonderful things happen and show up and work in our favor. So let's keep going with this stories of yours. What more do you have to share with us? Your spirit and your story and your beauty is coming across loud and clear tonight.
Right. Yeah, one thing I wanted to make a note of is some of the people that we've been studying with too have kind of pointed out that the system is responding to more of us sending in things.
Yes.
And so the impression that we've got is that the system is going to test you. You may have your paperwork in order, but are you going to back down when there's the first no? And so then, in being confronted with authority, have we all been so indoctrinated to follow authority? I know that's been my journey, to step into my own authority. And what does that mean from the perspective of being in my own honor and being in my own sort of knowing? But the idea that the system is going to potentially test you, and that comes back to, do you have the ability to respond from a place of truly knowing who you are, and having the ability to rebut the presumptions and assumptions? I mean, that's another huge takeaway that we've had, is that being trapped by this matrix is based on the almost the passive consent on our behalf of being these persons, and the various assumptions and presumptions that are made about us. And so that, to me, is where the paperwork can help rebut any of those things to really establish who you are. As a little visual, this is something that I just carry in my glove box. I call it the glove box packet. And so this is what I had when the highway patrol pulled me over. I never even had to give it to him, but I pulled out, saying, well, here's my affidavit on file with the Secretary of State. And here are some of the, high court, Supreme Court cases making the distinction between one's ability to travel. And, here are some here are some of the letters I've written to the DMV that have gone by unrebutted. And it's not necessarily presenting this as the proof, but it's presenting this from my own standpoint of just knowing who I am, that I'm not just sitting there saying I'm a man and I can travel, but I know who I am. And it's also backed by the Supreme Court has recognized the man and woman's ability to travel freely. And so having these things as a supportive tool feels like it's helpful to me to be in that conversation with someone, because most likely a lot of the,
But you don't want to create controversy.
yeah, you want to remove controversy, you want to come to remedy, and realizing that a lot of these characters themselves don't know. I would be surprised. I would imagine that a lot of the men and women who are acting as police officers don't know the distinction between a man and woman and a person. I mean, as a side, I'm dealing with that I was doing some part-time work with a company, refrain from saying who it is, but, stepping forth, making the distinction between, I'm the man giving my sweat equity. I want my full compensation. I don't want you to pay the straw man who I am a representative for, and then the straw man has to pay the taxes because it's a gift to the straw man. I want you to pay me directly as a man. I want full compensation. Nobody there knew the difference between that there was a distinction between a man and a person. And I'm in the midst now of having to communicate and kind of assert myself in that way, and appreciating the dance between whether it's a company having to step forward. And, through that process was the payroll person that I sent to initially back in March said no. And then I said, well, what's your evidence? And then the head of legal counsel sent back no and didn't cite any evidence. And I required evidence again. And then the regional vice president showed up at work to tell me no. And I said, well, where's the evidence? And I just didn't accept no from the standpoint that nobody has presented me with the evidence to correct any claims that I'm making. And until that happens, I'm going to continue to proceed as if what my understanding is in fact true. And so it's kind of an example of just realizing, oh, each of those steps along the way, the version of me a few years ago, A, wouldn't have even stepped forward to question this, and B, would probably fold it at the first no. Oh, I guess it's not possible. But, to have the regional vice president come out, not once, but twice, and then, in the process, and really realizing we're all just men and women here. This man has no authority over me as a man. And so that process of the education, of the opportunity to step into who we are, is an untangling, kind of pulling off all of the blankets that have just subdued our gnosis, and experiencing that as a gradual thing. It's like there's a difference between learning something and knowing something and embodying something. And that's what I'm finding is continuing to reveal itself within me, is in that ability to just stand firm in the midst and be the one asking questions. I remember hearing something that sort of asking is as king. The king and the queen are the ones who ask questions. So this idea of being the one asking, show me the evidence. Where am I wrong? I'm prepared to be wrong. I'm prepared to learn if you have something to teach me, but you're not presenting me with any substance. You're just saying no, So anyway, that's just a little bit of the backdrop and sort of that balance between the knowing and then having things in order. I've rebutted the presumptions, and to do that through things like an affidavit, or, what are the tools available to us to step forth and assert the knowing of who we are as part of that education, part of that conversation.
Thank you. Very well expressed and inspiring, because you've just shared a transformation. I'm always touched when people tell stories about how they're a different person now. That the way you show up today is not the same way you might have done in the past. To me, that's everything. In fact, that's why I do what I do. I'm not here just to impart a little bit of information to people. I am here for transformation. And thank you so much, Raban. You've really touched me and made me feel like my life is meaningful in your sharing that transformation. And I want that for everybody. Imagine every American having that transformation, whatever it takes, whether it's a snap of a finger because a little light goes off in their head, or they take a course, or they throw themselves into a situation like you have and deal with the adversity in it. Like you said, they say no the first time, like, wait a minute, I did everything right, and it didn't work. You could run for the hills, but you didn't, and I've heard you have to be prepared to go as many as 3 times, before they finally capitulate and do what's proper and what's right and what's true. So again, thank you so much for your presentation. Lori, you two are also an inspiration. In fact, you're being together, I have to acknowledge that too, like you're a couple. And there's this expression, the power couple, well, right right here in this forum, you guys are the power couple, being such a gift to all of us. So
Find a partner to do this work with. It does make it easier. It helps along the road. Absolutely.
Yes, you guys support each other. It's clear that you guys support each other, and you're a team. Your relationship has a purpose greater than yourselves. Very evident, and I acknowledge you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
All right, so Christy, who's a regular with us, always good to see you, Christy. Do you have a question or comment for
Yes,
our?
thank you, Clint. I do. So, Roban and Lori, 2 things. I made, I think, probably a mistake in the DOT plates I had. I did not have the foreign EIN for it. So that's a huge distinction, and everybody needs to know if you're going to apply for them, you need to get the foreign EIN first. And there's a way to answer those questions. I'm in the process of doing it. I haven't done it yet. I used my SS number, which wasn't good, which still kept me in their jurisdiction, which was not fun. I'm seeing a lot of places where I just took no for the answer, and it was not fun either. I'm not going to go into my details right now, but I also think that if you do it that way and you get the DOT plates, I'm not as comfortable with the Z plates, but it looks like you have a Z plate. I'm just curious,
Well-
do you have a Z plate and a DOT plate?
No, I should clarify. I made my own plate.
Oh, okay.
So I designed that and created it myself as a man and put it on my vehicle.
So how did that work with the foreign EIN? You didn't tie the two together, or? Because
No,
usually
I
they
mean-
send you a plate through the DOT will send you a plate once you get that foreign EIN number, but I mean, no, those two are separate, but you just applied for the foreign EIN, and so you got that and you made your own plate is what you're saying. You didn't go
Yeah.
through the DOT.
Yep, we're happy to give a little bit more information. This is going to be part of the information that Raban's putting together to hopefully offer with Clint.
I see.
Is because it is tricky. We understand what you're talking about. It was tricky. We did get a foreign EIN number. We did have to fill out the DOT application very specifically.
Gotcha.
To make sure, because most of the DOT, like Raban mentioned, most of those that get the DOT are for commercial use.
Yes.
Yes, you absolutely want to make sure. And then after the fact, you're also going to send some documentation into the IRS to let them know this is a private, that this is not a commercial vehicle.
Oh,
This
okay. I
is
did not do that, I
private.
don't think. Yeah,
So
okay.
there's a couple different steps, and that's part of how we hope to help put some clarity around this, so it's not so scary as you are going through all those different questions, not knowing how how to answer them.
And one thing because there's this process of trying to understand kind of how the sausage is made, behind the curtain. When you look up my number, the DOT number, or Lori has one too, in the system, it just comes up the name that I use to get the EIN and then private. So I'm not sure if there's no indication on the DOT record that it's a foreign EIN. You
Oh,
just
yeah, okay.
you just
It
need
shouldn't be in their jurisdiction. It should show, yeah.
well, you just need an EIN number to get a DOT number. So, but there's no indication, because I'm driving, privately. I would highly recommend to get a foreign EIN number, because then you're kind of foreign doing business, alleged, kind of the metaphor of like a ship coming into harbor from another place to sort of do business here. I'm not intending on using this for anything other than just to get that DOT number.
Yeah, because Pat Bennett was on a few months back, and she pretty much, you can't just get an administrative EIN or the trust EIN or the banker's EIN. It's got to be the foreign EIN if you're going to deal with this kind of stuff. And then I was curious about you not thinking about getting an ID and a passport through the Copper Moonshine Stills people. That's supposed to help, because we're kind of still in their jurisdiction when we get those California licenses. I still have mine. I haven't turned it in because sometimes I have to rent a car, and you can't rent a car without a California driver's license. But
my intention is to keep my driver's license for any car rental.
Right.
But I just won't present it as as ID on the road.
Right.
Like it was interesting when I was pulled over by the highway patrol, and he asked me if I had a license, and I told him I did. And he said, well, you could have just given that to me and I would have written you a warning.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, but as soon as I give you that, I'm under your jurisdiction.
Right.
Because we were talking about jurisdiction, and so, but for sure, if I ever want to drive commercially, well, then if I ever want to play Monopoly and be the top hat, well, then I'll be the top hat and I'll play Monopoly, right? If I ever want to rent a car or do something commercially, well, then by all means, I'll do that under the driver's license and adhere by the rules of the game type of thing. So,
right.
Yeah. So And in terms of the passport, that was one of the first things that Lori and I did when we applied for a passport, but we did a renewal, and then the paperwork was returned to us. They
Yeah.
sort of kiboshed it, and so we were, contemplating. All right, and then we learned a little bit more and said, okay, well, maybe we'll start from the beginning and do the DS-11 and start from scratch. And now we're in a process which is kind of different, that could possibly result in getting a diplomatic passport. So since we
Yeah.
don't have any, and that's just something kind of we're in the midst of to kind of see how it goes. And since we don't have any real travel needs or things coming up, we're like, all right, why don't we just sit on this rather than get that? So what I did recently, though, is I just went online and found a place. I made an ID for me as a man, just to have something that's an ID that I'm going to have, that if someone really pushes, that I have to have something, I'm going to have that and have my long form birth certificate, the registration of birth with me, a copy of it in my vehicle. And that's something that the State Department uses, allows one to use to travel in lieu of a passport.
Right.
So there's kind of these other ways that, in terms of using your own paperwork to identify who you are, and the long form birth certificate is one option in that way. So that's just, other things that we can explore to think about. The one aspect of getting for me personally, of consenting to be a national, is that a national owes allegiance to the state by its own definition. And I'm not sure if I don't want to have allegiance to anything except for my creator.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's almost like, perhaps in that way, it's like a monopoly piece that doesn't have to pay 200 when it pass go or something. But, it's still saying that I'm a piece in their game. And so that's just part of my journey of really wanting to be sure at this point of, what am I saying I am? Am I a man, or am I a title?
Quite a variety, just even with the people who are here right now amongst us, in
Yeah.
terms of how we identify and who we identify. Are we a citizen? Are we a national? Am I a natural man? Am I a foreigner? It's a wonderful question to ask oneself. We didn't even know we had options, not too long ago.
Yeah.
And now we know, now we've got too many options, but each one of them has implications for how you move about the world. And I know there are a lot of people who come to our courses and our free presentations like tonight and discuss state nationals as like a necessity. It's so central to so many strategies that people are deploying to assert their freedom. I do consider myself a foreigner to the U.S. federal corporation government. I mean, I consider them a foreign invader, a colonist in my land here, and they're doing a pretty good job of it, to be honest. Could I just ask for clarification again about this foreign EIN? Again, on the topic of being a foreigner or have a foreign EIN makes perfect sense, considering we are foreign to this entity, this colonizing entity. I just looked on the website for getting an EIN, and they had all the various types of EIN numbers. I didn't right away see foreign. Is it called something? What is it? When we go to look for it, is it specifically called foreigner or foreign EIN? What's it called?
Well, I believe the form is an SS4.
Okay.
And my understanding, and I don't have this in front of me, but you get it by applying over the phone. And there's a specific number that you call. The reason why it's promoted as the way to go is basically so we kind of fill this out just to be able to answer the questions when you're talking to the agent who's filling this out. And by not giving any social security number, that's where you're not tying it in, 7B, you don't fill that in. There's a process of giving them the information, and the foreign EIN has the prefix of a 98. So it's a 98 dash number. And that is our understanding of what differentiates and identifies a foreign EIN. You can mail this in, but we were able to phone up the number, and we each were on different phones, and we're able to, with the first agent, go through. And we actually used ours because it was advised to do it as the entity as a church.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was what we did, because sometimes the trust is they're asking you for the tax ID number, the TIN for the trust, and you can kind of get a little tripped up in that process. But we had no problem getting the 98 number through the phone call. That's kind of the process that we went through. And
Fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
look at these options, and not one of them says foreign or foreign national or foreign country. Although it's other others. So thank you. Yeah, do it by
Yeah.
phone. And this is what we're dealing with. These things are hidden. They're hidden. They're obscure. They're not right out there in front, obviously. Thank you very much. Vishal, thank you for being here.
Sure. Clint, I just had a couple of quick clarifying questions that came up to my mind for both Roban and Lori. So Roban, you mentioned you said sent an affidavit to the State Department, and then from later on, what you just said a few minutes ago, I figured that you have not really done the national process. It's just an affidavit you created to establish yourself as a man, and you sent that off, and you kept a copy of it, and that's the one that's part of your package in your vehicle well, I don't know what the real term is, not vehicle, but in your transportation or whatever it is, carriage.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that when the DMV sort of sent you that, okay, you don't have to pay anything, but you can do the paperwork. You didn't do it. You did the DOT process instead. That's what I understood from what happened. And then you have not been since. I mean, you did describe that one incident where they kind of held you up, but otherwise you haven't been held up. I mean, nobody stopped you and said, hey, this plate doesn't look like anything we've seen before, so why do you have this plate? I mean, even when he did stop you, it was really for something else, and then he happened to look at it and say, well, okay, this is not it's not registered or whatever, right?
Well, I didn't have the plate on when I was pulled over by the highway patrol. I had my old plate on with the expired tags on it.
Oh, got it.
So now it's been a few months since I've been with the new plate, and haven't been stopped and any problem whatsoever with that.
And
Absolutely.
then Lori, when you sent your stuff to the Treasury, did you send any corresponding paperwork to the DMV also, or did you just send it directly there? And then, as Clint was saying, it somehow got wiped out, and when you went back to check, you found it was wiped out, or was there something you sent to the DMV as well?
So we did our affidavit process. So they did have a prior, I had written out an affidavit. So they did have that on file. I don't know if that really made much of a difference, but yes, I sent it directly to the Department of the Treasury. I did not even send it to the DMV.
And then you called the DMV, I presume, sometime later, and then just to check whether there was still something pending, and it was all wiped out.
Yes, because I was told that when you start the process of HJR, House Joint Resolution, and you start to do some of this, that it is sometimes easier, these bills that are kind of connected, right? That they all work somewhat under the same system. So that's why I thought, you know what, let's go ahead and try it with some of these parking tickets and smaller things. I haven't gone to bigger. I haven't done credit card statements yet, or I'm not doing any of the big stuff yet, because we still have some more paperwork we want to do. We're still kind of setting a couple things in motion to kind of make it a little firmer. So
and then this is just you don't have to answer boil the whole ocean, but presumably you assembled this information from various different sources, and then you had to kind of process it to arrive at, okay, this is what you want to do. Because as Roban said, I mean, you didn't do the national process, but you did something that made sense to you, which is, hey, I'm going to send an affidavit, claim my status, whatever, and I'm going to keep that as my evidence. So clearly you've looked at a number of different sources, because there is hundreds literally at this point,
Yeah.
And
we've really been picking and choosing. We've really been listening to we've taken a couple different courses, and we've been taking from things that seem reasonable and true to us, as concrete, real as we can get. That's really where we're at right now. And then we're in the place where we're like, look, the only way we're really going to learn this is to start doing some of this.
Exactly.
We just need to start to do and learn along the way. So that has been a process for us also.
Go ahead, Connie.
Oh, I'm a secured party creditor and that's kind of thing. And I've been arrested and thrown in the slammer in Naples, Florida for having funny plates. And I have my, I've got my plate, right? I had an example of it. It's a DOT number. I'm a non-commercial driver, traveler, excuse me. And but I haven't been stopped lately. I think they're running out of cops up here in the Northwest. That's what's happening. But it just seems like they cut the population in half up here. But anyway, I was going to say that I just got a $450 deal because I'm disabled. I have a disabled placard, and it was like a month past due. And some guy caught it while I was at Best Buy getting my PC fixed. He saw it, and some King County cop, and he puts a $450 ticket on it because I'm past due a month or so on my disabled placard. I mean, this is unbelievable, unethical beyond belief. I'm a high school teacher. I mean, yeah, I know right from wrong. So anyway, I'm going to do my red ink deal, which I've done with 2 of these infractions. One was for $500. One, I was in an accident. I was hit from behind, and the cop, so the woman in the accident says, let's get a police report. I said, no, don't do that. Anyway, the cop gets there and he gives me a ticket for $750 for having for not having a license or not having a registrator, BS. And that I just did my red ink with my UCC code, and it's a little extensive. It's a lot of numbers, but I put this on my infractions 2 to 3 days right after you get the ticket, a day or 2 after the ticket, and then I sent it in. I've done it twice. The 500 ticket I've never heard from again. 750 ticket never heard from again. This one's going to go the same way, and but I did have to do it twice on those other 2 infractions, and yet I think they give up, after the second one. I've got another friend who's doing the same thing, but he's never done anything. He doesn't have the knowledge base that I have, so he's saying, "Oh, they're coming after me now. I should have paid it," and he's backing down, like this gentleman just talked about, how we back down after we're get a little bit scared, and so anyway, this really has worked for me. So I'm just showing everybody what the UCC code does. It has a lot of power in red ink on your infraction. Send it in, and I would send it registered mail, and then you can get rid of these infractions because you've done no harm to anybody. No person or property has been damaged. So you need to do this and follow up, and I hope we all can do this one day. And anyway, I just wanted to put my 2 cents in about the red ink UCC code.
Wonderful. I appreciate that. Yeah, everyone who knows Connie, she's a regular here, and she's been telling us about her experience all along with the DOT plates and her particular solutions. Serious problem solver you are, Connie.
I just don't like to see thugs running around harassing people. That's just my thing.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thanks for being here again. And
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Glenn.
Quick question, Connie. When you're sending that in, are you sending that in for them to pay the fine, or are you sending it in to say I don't consent? Which what?
Yeah, at the very bottom of the UCC in red ink code says without recourse, no contract, refused. It's the wording is there, but your UCC numbers are there as well, so they get the picture that you're not complying. Yeah.
Which UCC is that you're referencing?
I'd have to read off all the numbers to you.
Okay, but there's a bunch on there. Gotcha.
From Secured Services, Robin gave me this, and it's worked ever since. But if you want to just email me or find me, I'll send it to you. But it's just a bunch of letters and numbers,
Can you hold
and
that up to your camera a little bit closer, and we can capture it?
I don't know if it's in the light, but you can.
Connie, is that right on the ticket?
Oh, yeah, I write it right on the ticket or the front or the back or wherever, or I attach a piece of paper and staple it and then get it registered and sent like that. But we gotta stop the thuggery. It's just horrific, and we didn't do any harm to anybody.
Yeah,
exactly. Treating us like criminals. All right, Krista, thanks for being here tonight. Go ahead.
Everybody, I'm going to be really brief. Thank you. It's good to see you, Clint. Lori and Raban, really good to hear your stories again. And they're important stories, what they're sharing with you. I know the process they've been through. And I just wanted to share a little story that I think will help those of you who are on the fence as to whether you should learn more. Raban's right on about how it has to be embodied, because it's the only way I think these officers and these judges and what have you take you seriously. A friend of mine who's a neighbor down the street, Mike, was in traffic court. He was there for the better part of 2-3 hours, had to watch the judge go through a number of people. And a young man came up and tried to exercise his authority in regards to common law, but he wasn't very well versed, actually. And so he stumbled, didn't make a whole lot of sense. And at the end of the day, the judge made an example to him in the room and said, listen, had he understood what he was doing here, I would have dissolved this ticket. But because he doesn't know what the F he's talking about, I'm giving him the ticket. So, and that was a Marin judge. So these judges are kind of onto this. You know, they're actually not here to entirely screw with us. They would, I think some of them would actually like to see us empowered, like to see us like exercising our own law. So I share that story because I think robots will be supportive towards that in getting a deeper knowledge of how you can embody it and feel it for yourself and feel your strength and power in what you're doing. And the other thing I wanted to see if there was, and though this could be the longest discussion ever, I'm very interested in what got turned over in the Chevron deference thing and how that's going to apply to the DMV and how it's going to apply to all of these contracts and licensings that we've agreed to. I think there's going to be something here for all of us. And so I think
that one is wide sweeping for sure. It's actually so broad sweeping that it's hard to even know exactly all the things it's going to affect in terms of the administrative state. So yeah, the deep state, you've heard about that. You've heard about administrative law, and that is actually the law form that primarily is what is used to organize us, to control us. The government uses the executive branch, their administrative rulings and their administrative tribunals to mete out some perverted form of justice that the Supreme Court recently saw through and has handed we Americans a big win. Thank you for bringing that, Krista. We also want to open it up to folks who are having some questions, some experiences. In months past, we've heard things, people getting arrested and getting beaten up by the police, getting arrested. It started out as a traffic violation, but ends up being resisting, and who's been arrested for having no plates, getting his car towed. We've had lots of stories. So anybody who wants to speak about what you're going through, if you've gotten a ticket in the last month, what you plan to do about it, if you're considering not registering your vehicle, if you're considering taking off your plates, or I like one of my favorite little subtopics in free travel is this ability to put a filter on your license plate that doesn't allow for the automatic cameras to read your plate. So it changes the whole equation when you're dealing with toll plazas, toll booths, and automatic, payment toll booths, and also these traffic control cameras, which are complete affront to our God-given rights to freely travel. So I'm not suggesting you break the law. I would never do that. But I have learned that you can order these filters online, and there's different kinds because there are different kinds of cameras, different kinds of wavelengths. The cameras use infrared, for example, versus regular cameras. So you want to check out, what kind of camera you're looking at. There's some other clever ways where there's like a little leaf that it's not deployed, but when you go through toll plaza, you just press a button and the leaf covers up enough of your license plate that
It's so James Bond.
it's very James Bond. And I believe we're morally obliged to do whatever we can do to fight against the system, and that is one way that you can do it that undermines their revenue, because they're purely revenue generating, and that's just one way for you to opt out. And if everyone did it, they would have to come up with some new technology. Anyway, it's a kind of a battle, like in the Revolutionary War, that there were some pretty subversive things that went on to subvert the British Army and their paid mercenaries. And so Americans, of course, should have done a great number of things, guerrilla warfare, so to speak, and we should be proud to do that, particularly the power imbalance that we're facing right now. We are like a guerrilla army. Fiddlewitch is here. Do I know you by another name, or is this like a first time you've been here?
I've been here before. Sometimes I call it Fiddlewitch. Sometimes I call it Laurie Fisher, depending on how I register.
All right. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great down here in the mountains of North Carolina. I got a question about a car that's unregistered. What sort of backup is there like to get it out of an impound? Because apparently you need all the registration and everything to get your car out of an impound, or if it gets towed somewhere for whatever reason, legitimate or otherwise. What do you know about being able to get a car that's unregistered out of impound?
Do not consent to the towing.
You know, that's an interesting question because, I mean, one thing that we're learning is that most of the things that we buy through our straw man is really owned by the public estate. So it's an interesting thing to just only have the, you know, the certificate of title, which is not ownership. So that's just kind of as a parallel, something that I'm looking into, you know, but there is also an aspect of sort of possession being 9/10 of the law. And so the idea of, you know, if someone were to try to, for example, want to, you know, take my automobile, like I would consider that a trespass by way of theft and hold the man or woman accountable for that, you know, as a man or woman. But so in terms of, you know, someone that took your property and impounded it, you know, my first thought would be, you know, writing notices as a woman, inquiring about what kind of contract entitles them to take your property. And from that standpoint, it would be, you know, without any evidence, then I would consider that theft of my property. And I would hold that man or woman responsible, you know. And so there's a whole process of how one might do that, stepping forth as a man or a woman to sort of make a claim as a man or woman. But that would be my kind of direction that I would go in.
Well, it's more about like proof of ownership so that anybody can't come and claim a car that's been impounded. I mean, that's why they have that system there, so that they're giving the car back to its owner according to the certificate of title thing, of course.
Do you have any paperwork at all in terms of did you when you bought the vehicle, did you get any paperwork? Did you get any contract with the person, man or woman that you bought that from?
Well, my car thankfully is not impounded, but I am
Oh.
moving towards unregistering it. And that was just one of the questions that came up. That's a bit of a snafu for an unregistered car, is its ability to be gotten out of impound. I think some other document is needed or something to just prove, hey, this is my car. It's not registered, but this is my car. I just don't know what that would be.
Where did you get the car from? Like, how did you acquire the car?
Oh, I bought my car from a Toyota dealer, 13 years ago.
And do you have any paperwork from that purchase?
Yeah, but that's, again, my car is not impounded. There's just the
Yeah. But I'm just saying you have the paperwork that sort of identifies, like, here's the VIN number, here's the paperwork that shows that I purchased this property.
Well, yeah, one would think, in another car, or when this car gets unregistered, that there is, certificate of ownership of some sort. I'm just wondering, they generally reject anything but registration if you go to the tow yard.
Well, I mean, again, that's where I would sort of assert my right to my property as a man, and I have the paperwork of the receipt that I bought that automobile. So, unless someone's got a claim of otherwise, I think that would be pretty clear that that's your car. You have a paperwork that has the VIN number on it, and that seems like a pretty strong piece of evidence. And the system is dealing with fictional beings. The manufacturer certificate of origin, whoever has that is the owner of the vehicle,
Yeah.
or the automobile, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm familiar with MCOs, but it turns out in many places they're destroyed within a year or so after being registered with the state, and then they tell you, oh, we destroy those certificates, and so they don't exist. Even in some states, you can't get them. You have to come up with another document of some sort.
one thing that we've learned is that they say that they destroy them, but they also put everything on microfiche.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's technically true that they've destroyed it, but they still have a record of it.
Oh, uh-huh.
So our understanding is that they won't get rid of the evidence that they own it, but they might have it in another form. It's very challenging for anyone to get that MCO, but there are some other ways. But in terms of just as it is now, having some sort of paperwork that attaches you to that vehicle as a woman, and not as a fictional being. If something were to happen to the car and they were to try to take it again, I mean, to me, that would be a trespass by way of theft if someone took your property, right? If someone just came and took your purse and walked away with it or something, like, well, that's a wrong, right?
Well, it's mostly like in city living, you park somewhere and didn't see the sign and somebody
Yeah.
calls a tow truck because you're blocking traffic or whatever.
Yeah.
Trust. Yeah.
And yes, some folks are trying to discharge their car loans. If you want to own your automobile outright, be prepared apparently to secure this automobile in the interim period because of the risk of someone coming along and stealing your automobile. We call it repossession. Okay. Thank
you.
Fiddlewitch. Thank you for being here. Ken, what's going on?
Hello, Clint. It's great to
Oh,
be here. Great to hear all your Roban and Lori and kind of the tried and true stories of what it's like to discover who you are and the way to navigate the minefield. Put on your X-ray vision so you can see where you're stepping, right? It's really interesting because I love coming to and kind of seeing the methods that people use to navigate what they're doing. And, I totally get that, when you come in and you start arguing and making the claim of being a living man, you're arguing jurisdiction. And you're saying basically, I'm outside of your jurisdiction, so therefore you have no authority on me. And but at the same time, we do have this commercial entity that even though it's not us, we can take advantage of it and use it to our benefit. And so I look at it and saying that as I am the surety and the executor of that estate, executor of that trust, I can sign for it, but without being liable. And so a lot of the different things that I hear with, obviously, if your vehicle is being registered, it's all on a fiction. And so to bring it back from the fiction, you have to basically pay off that lien, which is exactly what Lori did when she invoked HJR 192. And so in response to the other woman who was just talking about, the impound, um, you know, basically I would look at it and I would say, okay, I need to find out exactly what the lien is that's taking place to authorize that impound. In other words, what's the debt on that car? Discharge that basically using equity, which is basically doing a banker's acceptance on the note. So the impound would either be through the city or the county, or through the state. But then there'd be another level of lien that would basically bind up the MSO. And so then you go on in and find out what the amount or get a statement um, for kind of a payoff statement from the state saying, what do I need to do to pay that off? And I haven't gone through that, but I'm just kind of thinking about it conceptually. That would make a lot of sense. Um, and I guess the other thing I just kind of wanted to say is that everything that we see here is by consent. So, we have to look at it and saying, what were the contracts that we signed on to that we need to unsign and then pay off that lien to be an honor? And so it definitely is a process. And so you look at it and saying, okay, what's the stack of contracts that I stepped into? And then when I try to extract myself out of them, when they rebut and they say, oh, no, 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 you can't do that, okay, so then you basically do a banker's acceptance on each one of those individually. So you don't have to like conceptualize all the stuff that you signed over your lifetime. They will bring it up. They will notify you. And so at which case, when they notify you, you just accept it and move on. And so it seems to be in the kind of the process that I've been doing. I have done the national passport, which I find to be very effective. It does kind of bring you in as a state citizen, which is certainly better than being a commercial citizen. Um, and then basically using the process of equity in a lot of these different things. I really agree with what Lori and Roban were talking about in terms of writing up your own affidavit, because that's really where you learn it, is that's where the rubber hits the road. So thank you for everything you guys are bringing up.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, thanks. That was great. You know, that's a whole other aspect too, this that whole journey of our relationship to the estate and kind of that level of status change, you know. Are you a trustee or are you a benefactor or are you a beneficiary? Like with the simplicity of that and, you know, kind of rebutting the presumption of being the trustee and the obligation to perform, and that whole journey of understanding sort of what was done in order to create these legal fictions that are sort of operating in commerce, that were the, you know, the basically the authorized representative for, you know, in a certain capacity, and understanding that distinction between what's going on and what applies to whom. You know, all those, again, all those codes and acts and statutes apply to persons. They don't apply to men and women. You know, the word man and woman doesn't appear in any code, act, or statute. To our awareness, not once. You know, they don't apply in that way. So yeah, I really appreciate you know, that understanding of stepping forth and creating remedy through the estate, you know, and that's this other way of knowledge and understanding.
Yes, we're just in such a house of mirrors, you know, legally. You know, I'm looking at the California DMV website here about titles, and it says a legal owner of a vehicle. And it's, to the average person, that means, you know, I own it. But the word ownership has been distorted. Legal owner, right? Why not just owner?
Yeah.
But a legal owner and of a vehicle in particular. So it's through word magic. Obviously, they've created a parallel system to corral us into. And this is in a form of an acknowledgement to everyone here that we are somehow motivated or interested and unwavering in our desire to find a way out of this corral. I believe, you know, that when they built the corral, that they also had to build a way out. You can use a lot of different metaphors, a prison, a corral. You know, we live here in the Bay Area, a number of us, I guess, tonight. And there's Alcatraz, right, sitting there in the middle of the bay. And you hear stories about people when they used to have federal prisoners there and the escape intentions of people who escape. Some of them were very elaborate, digging a hole in your cell, you know, with a spoon over many, many, I don't know, months, and then what, right? So you crawl down this tunnel that you've carved out, keeping the hole hidden, and then all in one night, you know, when everyone's asleep, you create a dummy in your bed so the night watchman looks in and sees you're still in bed, but really you're down to the tunnel. Anyway, the point is, a lot of people think that it's this super elaborate, you know, planning that you have to do to somehow get out of the system. And yeah, there are a few details that we're learning here, but on the whole, I think the door is just kind of unlocked and we just need to walk through it. So to help me with this metaphor, because what we're doing is teaching people how to embody things and not just follow a list of steps. David James Rodriguez is here.
Wow. Robon and Lori, that was a great presentation tonight. And Clint, great job hosting. And the great questions. I get very excited when I join this as well. I love the confab idea, the community idea, you know, that we're all kings and queens. We're all self-owners. Dare call the kings and queens of the sovereigns on the earth. It's very exciting to see this community growing and getting stronger and trying new stuff out. I was just introducing this call to a friend who's interested in taking his plates off and not renewing his driver's license. I said, yeah, it's every month. You know, a lot of people are starting to do this. And I think I get so excited because they were going to attach the vaccine passport to the driver's license the last couple years. So it is the tip of the spear, I would say. And for the people that have the bravery and the courage to do it, so much respect. I'm so glad that I got to hear the story from you guys tonight, and just understand that we're on the winning team. You know, never feel isolated or alone. I think that's what I also get from these calls, you know, with your co-hosting, Clint, and what we've been doing the last few years. If you're just joining, go look at the YouTube videos from, you know, last 2 years. So many good presenters and courageous people that everybody has a different angle. You know, we're talking about the vehicle codes tonight, and this is very exciting because it's like It doesn't matter the angle that you choose. Just go try something. Understand. I love when Robon said when the CHP, I think it was, they pulled him over. He says, "All right, now it's time to go. Now it's time to talk with these guys." That's what it is. That when the moment comes, you take a breath and you say, "All right, this is what I prepared for." And you're just so calm, Robon. I respect you and just honor you and acknowledge you for staying calm, because I'm an excitable guy, and some people get fear or terror, and I just I try to hold court on the side of the road, and I learned that holding court on the side of the road is not the best, but if you're communicating with honor, and if you're video recording, that's really smart too. But doing what's right, and I just love how you said, if I'm mistaken, right? Because I believe I have a right to travel. If I'm mistaken, please let me know. And that was just said so well and articulate. And that's what's happening. There's so many people that are starting to do this all over TikTok as well. And you can see the good people who do it and some of the people who are angry. But we're all on this spectrum of exercising our freedoms. And the right to travel is so important, I think, because once they lose that, how are they going to bribe us? With the registration and all these things, it's over. When everybody in the neighborhood says, "You know what? We have a right to use the public byways and the easements or whatever you want to call it. And if we're using them for taxis or Ubers or bus driving or truck driving, yeah, maybe we'll pay a license fee. But if we're just taking myself to the grocery store or taking my mother or girl or children somewhere, why do I need permission?" So this is the great self-ownership awakening that I'm so empowered by. And this call is a part of the digital community that is really rising. So I just want to honor everybody for being here tonight and knowing that we are on the winning team. Always remember that. And no matter what's coming next, it's going to be about your mind control and terror. But we stand up in honor and morality and goodness and agape love, which is love of humanity. Okay, not romantic love, although that's good too, and family love and friendship love and all these things, self-love, but agape's love of humanity. And that is sincerely saying, "You know what? I love you guys. I don't know you, all of you, but we're all part of the human family. And once we unite together around a cause, and that cause seems to be self-ownership and personal responsibility, freedom of choice, who can disagree with these things?" So it's just a joy to be with you, Clint, and the presenters tonight and the questioners, and to remember where we are in the evolution of freedom and where we are in the state of history, the state of freedom. It's evolving. It's getting more expansive and personal. And remember, the king used to be thought as divine right of kings, the monarch. And then we evolved to Magna Carta, and we say we got rights too. And then we evolved to what we're at now, which is individual self-ownership, personal responsibility, sovereignty. And these are the secrets that they tried to keep hidden from us. If you guys haven't read the 1870 book by Lysander Spooner titled The Constitution of No Authority, I invite you to take a look at that book, because it really inspired me and just solidified everything which I felt as a boy and now as a man, which is I'm allowed to do what I want as long as I don't harm anybody, as long as I don't damage their property, and as long as I uphold my contracts. Right? These are the basics of natural law, natural rights. And that's what he was talking about 150 years ago. I was shocked that this was on paper 150 years ago. So there's another inspirational thing I'm getting into right now from 1897. It's just unbelievable. Titled "In Tune with the Infinite." The author is Ralph Waldo Trine. And you know what he's talking about? He's talking about the secret is that we're all connected to the divine right now. And there's nothing to worry about. We've been here before. This is all good. So have faith, have courage, be bold, you live your purpose, live your destiny, whatever you feel. And in 1897, he's talking about the great spiritual awakening. And so I think what happened is the financial guys, the education guys, and the military guys all heard that and were like, we got to lock everything down. And then they started the Federal Reserve, the Rockefellers got the school system and the medical system. The Flexner Report in 1911, I think it was, they all tried to mock, but now they've lost control of the media. Clint and I did not ask permission to start this show. He and I just said, "Hey man, we should start a show." And we said, "We should do it. Let's go." So it's exciting time to be alive. The shows, you don't need permission, the podcast, whatever platforms out there. Odyssey seems to be an honest platform. BitChute. I've had some stuff deleted off Instagram and YouTube. Maybe you guys do. Censorship is a sign that they are losing. So be bold in your posts, be honorable as best you can if you like to, and just know that this family, this truth will not be suppressed no matter what they do to any of us. And there's so many people that are awakening. I just spoke in Northern California, Mendocino at Music in Sky with Alex Zeck and Mike Winter, Deepak, the guy who wrote the Plandemic musical with Mickey Willis. And you know what he said on stage? He talked about voluntarism. And Alex Zeck talked about voluntarism. So it's so awesome because, you know, we've been banging this drum for a few years and these ideas are getting out. And for some of you who never heard of the idea of voluntarism, all it means is that all human relationships need to be voluntary. Nobody's allowed to use coercion, intimidation, threats against any other peaceful person. And this idea is catching steam. So again, it's just so exciting to share these stories, what you're doing, to learn and to connect with people. And this is where we're at. You know, it's a great self-ownership awakening. Be bold. I'm learning stand-up comedy. I got a stand-up comedy show in like 2 weeks in Redding, California. So feel free to come up. Art and law, courage and community, all these things are coming together in a unified cause. I feel, even though we're all individuals and we're all unique, we're all diverse. So I just want to honor everyone for being here. Thank you, Clint and Robon and Lori and everyone that's here now and watching the replay. It's a beautiful time to be here, and it's just going to continue. So I'm looking forward to next month. We're just going to keep rocking it and keep inviting guests. If you know any good guests we should have on, please message us. Because there's so many people that are doing this. I'm so inspired to see like so many people. Of course, not everybody yet, but remember, November 5th is the International Remove Your Plates from the Car Day of Stephen Milani, the model anarchist on Instagram. He's organizing this event. It's Election Day. It's Guy Fawkes Day from V from Vendetta. And yeah, consider taking your plates off. Yes, we see voluntary, unconstrained by interference, unimpelled by another's influence, spontaneous acting of oneself, Coker versus state, done by design or intention, proceeding from the free and unrestrained will of the person, produced in or by an act of choice, resulting from free choice without compulsion or solicitation. The word, especially in statutes, often implies knowledge of essential facts, and it continues. Conveyance. I love how Robon calls it the private conveyance, because that's what it is. So it is it's not a vehicle, it's a conveyance, it's a car, it's private property, it's household goods. Language, it's another thing. My gosh. I met a lady named Danny Katz. She wrote a book called The Language of Betterarchy, and the gentleman who wrote Conscious Language did pass away last year. So she seems to be someone who's carrying on the torch of language, and law is all about language. So I'll leave it there for you guys tonight. And I just want to thank you for being here, and thank you, Clint, and all the presenters and the questioners participating in this. And I look forward to the first Tuesday, and know that you're born free at all times. Live your life and never be afraid to do what's right.
Yes. Amen. All right, everyone. I've opened the microphones. If you just want to shout out amen, hallelujahs to everything David just said. Thank Robon and Lori once again. Send blessings out into the universe with us. Just go ahead and shout out whatever you want. There's lots of love here.
Hallelujah. I'm from California too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Lori. Thank you, Clint, David, everyone.
Best apocalypse ever.
Peace, love. Remember, Nikola Tesla said, if you want the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So it's not just a California thing. I think it's a universal thing. So understand that and send positive vibrations to you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
God
Peace
bless.
and love.
God bless America.
Mhm.
Thank you.